He yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin reserves his time. The gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman's comments leads me to the question. Do Republicans believe that every attestation under federal law is rife for subversion? Americans must attest under penalty of perjury that their tax returns contain correct information. Do Republicans want to end this honor system by requiring Americans to provide even more documentation to the Internal Revenue Service? It's a federal crime to lie on alcohol, tobacco, and firearms form 4473, the firearms transaction record. That form is filled out under the same honor system that governs voter registrations. Are you telling me that Republicans are open to strengthening gun licensing laws in the United States and no longer accept attestation? Each of us must submit records to the FEC, attesting under penalty of perjury that our campaign committee reports are accurate. Do Republicans now want to provide the American people greater transparency around political spending? Because if they do, I've got a bill they can support, the Freedom to Vote Act. I'd also just suggest to the gentleman, Representative Bean, that an estimated 170,000 women in his district have a different last name on their birth certificate than is on their current photo ID, and roughly 397,000 residents of Florida's 4th District do not have a passport. It would cost them $51.7 million to secure one. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman, my friend from New Jersey, Mr. Conaway.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong opposition to the SAVE Act. While everyday Americans are struggling from the fallout of Trump's disastrous tariff policies, Republicans are pushing through a bill that strips Americans' constitutional right to vote, a vote that was hard-won and for which many died. They claim the SAVE Act is intended to prevent undocumented immigrants from voting, but it's already illegal for them to vote, and it is extremely rare. In reality, the SAVE Act makes it harder for Americans, especially women and people of color, to participate in our elections. We've seen these tactics before, creating barriers to the ballot box to suppress the vote, and yet Republicans continue to find ways to undermine democracy. I urge my colleagues to take a hard look in the mirror and ask themselves, do you want to stand on the side of voter suppression, or do you want to stand on the side of democracy? I choose democracy and will vote no on this dangerous anti-American bill. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, we're hearing from the other side that it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote. That's true. It's also illegal to evade Border Patrol and cross the border illegally into the United States of America. But enforcement matters. And we can look at what happens when you don't enforce the law under the Biden administration, what happens when you enforce the law under the Trump administration. I think back about when I went home to my hometown in Janesville, Wisconsin the other day, and I went to buy a 6-pack of beer. I walked in, and the gentlewoman at the desk said, "Brian, good to see you." Went back, grabbed a 6-pack of beer, came up. She said, "Brian, I need to see your ID." Pulled out my ID and handed it to her. She reviewed it. She allowed me to purchase a 6-pack of beer. Am I the only one here that thinks it's absolutely absurd that we protect our beer more than we protect our ballots? This law allows us to make sure that only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. Mr. Speaker, it's about enforcement of the law. I would ask my colleagues across the aisle, how many non-citizen votes should be okay? The answer to me and my colleagues on this side of the aisle is 0. Because every non-citizen that votes in a federal election in the United States of America cancels out the vote of a U.S. citizen. As we know in this chamber, very often House races are close. One of our representatives in this chamber was elected by simply 6 votes. 1 non-citizen voting in a federal election in the United States is too many. And the arguments I'm hearing from my colleagues on the left is that they're okay with non-citizens voting. It's essential that not only do we have the law, we enforce the law. And the SAVE Act does just that. It's my good friend Chip Roy from the state of Texas, the author of the bill, who I've been working with to do just that. And I now yield my friend, the gentleman from Texas, Chip Roy, as much time as he may consume to speak on the bill.
The gentleman has provided the gentleman from Texas for as much time as he may consume. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank the Speaker. I want to thank the chairman for his strong work and commitment to election integrity and to working with us on this bill, in particular, the SAVE Act. He's done an extraordinary job, and I'm proud to work with him and work with the rest of my colleagues on it. I'm proud to work with my friend Cleta Mitchell, who had a significant hand in what we were doing here. I'm quite certain that she is pretty well aware of protecting the right of females to be able to vote, along with my friends Stephanie Bice and Mary Miller and Laurel Lee, and Lauren Boebert, and Kat Kamak, all of whom came down to the floor in full support of this legislation, because they know the truth. They know the truth that the American people know, which is that as much as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to bring up the DMV, the American people know that the DMV is very good at giving driver's license to illegal aliens, because we know it to be true. We know that there are people who have been indicted for voting illegally. We know that there are voter rolls with massive numbers of people who are illegally present in the United States. We know that the previous administration let in millions of people into the United States wrongfully and illegally under parole and asylum, blatantly abusing the law to put people in the United States that have no basis for being here, many of whom carried out dangerous acts against American people, killed American citizens, but importantly, have been registering to vote. That's what's been happening. So what we understand is the American people have spoken very clearly that they believe only American citizens should vote in American elections. There's nothing controversial about that. There's nothing controversial about saying that you should be able to ensure that only citizens vote. And let's be very clear. Federal law has currently been interpreted to prohibit states from being able to check citizenship. That's the truth. That's why the state of Arizona, for example, has two systems, one for state and local, one for federal.
When he speaks, the gentleman's continued to
The good people of Arizona have two systems in place. They check for citizenship for state and local elections, and they're unable to check for citizenship in federal elections. The point of this bill is to ensure that we guarantee only citizens vote by allowing those states to be able to check, by having systems, federal systems, be open to the states to be able to check, and to require proof of citizenship when you register. There's nothing complex about that. There's nothing more sacred under the Constitution than ensuring that the people are able to have the voice in the election of the people that represent them in Washington and throughout the country. Once that is undermined, then people lose faith in the very institutions upon which this is built. This legislation is designed to restore that faith, to save our elections, to save election integrity. I'm proud to have worked on this bill with my friend, the chairman, with my colleagues on this side of the aisle. And I would note that 5 of my Democrat colleagues joined us last summer to vote for this bill. Hardly a partisan exercise. Hardly a partisan exercise to say that we should protect the elections of the American people. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill, to restore confidence and faith in our elections, to take a step forward in ensuring that people know that citizens will be in control of this republic as the founders intended. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves his time. Gentleman from New York.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a inquiry on time.
The gentleman from New York has 7 minutes remaining.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like now to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Alabama, my friend, Mr. Figures.
The distinguished gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, all of my colleagues today are speaking about this bill, and it's personal to me because I represent Alabama. I represent the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement, and I would be remiss not to mention that election integrity was not an issue that my colleagues have been pushing until Donald Trump told them that they should be pushing this issue. Americans have confidence in elections. But see, for me, it's about too many people doing too many things too courageously for me to be able to stand here today. Names like James Reed and Jimmy Lee Jackson and Viola Liuzzo, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, Michael Schwerner. These are people who died for me to be here today. Congressman John Lewis, who most of you served with, died for me to be here today. And this bill would make it tougher than it has ever been in American history to register to vote at a time where we have the technological ability to be able to verify election eligibility. But we don't want to do that. We want to make it tougher for people to actually get registered to vote. And that is not what we should be doing. We should be making it easier for people to vote. Easier.
Time has expired.
I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, can I inquire the time remaining?
The gentleman has 3.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to my friend and colleague, the representative from California, Mr. Kiley, to speak.
The gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today as a co-sponsor of the SAVE Act to advance the radical proposition that only American citizens should vote in American elections. Now, of course, this isn't radical at all. It is common sense. I think the vast majority of Americans would be shocked to learn that it elicits any opposition at all. In many states in this country, foremost my own state of California, the administration of our elections is completely out of touch with the rest of the developed world, falling well short of the standards that ought to exist in a modern democratic society. This measure, requiring proof of citizenship in order to vote, is a needed corrective. I believe in my state it will complement other initiatives that we are advancing now to require voter ID and to have a timely vote counting process in order to restore public confidence in our election process. What is at stake is not only election integrity and election security, but democratic legitimacy, and ensuring that our people have the ability to express themselves fully and our own identity as a state and a country through the democratic process. I urge passage of this on a bipartisan basis.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves his time. Gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentle lady from California, Ms. Friedman.
Gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
California.
California.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranking Member Morelli. I rise in strong opposition to the so-called SAVE Act, a bill that is a modern-day poll tax targeting American women and low-income Americans. This bill bans voter ID. It bans using driver's licenses as voter ID unless they're backed by additional proof of citizenship, a requirement that excludes nearly all driver's licenses and real IDs issued today. Now, for women who have changed their names, often through marriage, this means showing a passport or a birth certificate that may not match their legal name. That would have meant that my grandmother, who had long since lost her birth certificate, would have been ineligible to vote under this bill. In California alone, that would include more than 7 million women. Now, this would force those women to pay $130 just to get a passport they need to vote. With nearly a third of Californians lacking passports, this bill would cost them more than $1.25 billion statewide. If you have to pay to vote, that's called a poll tax, plain and simple. It is also unnecessary red tape for people just trying to cast a ballot. This is a bill in search of a problem. We have enough trouble getting American citizens to vote.
The gentleman's time has expired. The
Yes,
gentleman reserves his time. Does the gentleman seek to reserve your time?
I reserve my time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
The gentleman will reserve his time pending his, I believe, close. The gentleman's given that right. The gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield to my dear friend, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Latimer.
The gentleman
For
from
1
New
minute.
York is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morelli. The American people in my district and in my state have spoken clearly. This bill is voter suppression, pure and simple. It's brought to us under the guise of stopping illegal voting. And when we analyzed voting in Westchester County, 1 million people that I was the county executive of, we found no appreciable illegal voting. But this is an opportunity for this majority to try to impose their will on the states that they don't already control. They want to end mail voter registration in my home state to satisfy other states' regressive laws. They want to require people who have voted legally for years to prove their citizenship if they not only change their name, but if they move. A simple move requires them to drive to a county board of elections and prove that they're an American citizen when they have proven that over the course of 20 years or more of voting. This bill subjects local officials to hefty criminal fines if they register someone outside of these rules. This is an expensive, unfunded mandate in Westchester, in New York City, and in all the other states that are involved. Mr. Speaker, I yield my time back. Thank you, Mr. Morelli.
Yields back his time. Gentleman from New York has 4 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Wisconsin has chosen to save his time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was remiss earlier. I do want to remind my colleague, Mr. Roy, an estimated 150,000 women in his district have a different name on their birth certificate than on their photo ID, and 336 residents of Texas's 21st district lack a passport to a cost of $43.7 million to those who would need to get a passport should they choose that. Also, I'd like to remind my colleague, Representative Kiley, an estimated 135,000 women in his district have a different name, and roughly 268,000 residents of California's 3rd district do not have a passport. The cost to them for getting one, $34.8 million. And with that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to my friend, the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Johnson.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to the Voters' Republican Suppression Act. I want to give Republicans one chance to actually fulfill the rhetoric that they are spouting to the American people, which is actually giving people the right to vote. I appreciate that I appreciate efforts to ensure that our elections are safe, free from foreign interference, and that only U.S. citizens can vote. However, one of my concerns with this bill is that, as it written, it does not allow for mail or online voter registration. This bill, let me be perfectly clear, requires hardworking American people, people who go to work at 8 in the morning, who don't get off till 5 p.m., to go in person to a voter registration office, to take off work, to go in person to register to vote. That is why I have offered an amendment to have online voter registration. There are millions of service members and their families serving our countries overseas, individuals with disabilities, seniors who are unable to vote in person. Why are we keeping these barriers for eligible citizens when the world is evolving around us? We live in modern times, and so many of our lives happen online, from daily activities. We can pay our bills, we can pay our taxes online. You can apply for college, you can apply for a car and home and everything else online. For this reason, at the appropriate time, I will offer a motion to recommit this bill back to committee. If the House rules permitted, I would have offered the motion with my common sense amendment to this bill. My amendment would ensure Americans could still register to vote and prove their citizenship online or by mail. This is a simple common sense amendment, and it would make certain that we can care for the people who can't get out of their homes, and that this Congress is not depriving any eligible citizen of their right to vote. Republicans have refused this amendment. Republicans are refusing your ability to go and make it easy for citizens to register to vote in this country. Republicans can now vote to pass this amendment. I ask unanimous consent to insert the record of this text of this amendment, and I hope my colleagues will join me, and I yield back.
Without objection, the gentlewoman yields. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
And I would reserve the balance of my
Well,
time.
the gentleman, it's my understanding the gentleman
prepared to
reserves
close.
the right to close, so the gentleman from New York would now be recognized for the time remaining.
Thank you
Gentleman's
very much,
recognized.
Mr. Speaker. The SAVE Act is, to put it nicely, the most severe voter suppression bill ever considered at the federal level. Coupled with President Trump's recent anti-voter election executive order, the SAVE Act would end the voter registration process for all Americans as they know it. Republicans have repeatedly failed to present any evidence that non-citizen voting at a federal level has ever affected the outcome of any election. The SAVE Act will make it harder for American citizens to vote, to make it harder for married women to vote, to make it harder for service members, students, rural Americans, senior citizens, Native voters, survivors of natural disasters, and survivors of domestic abuse to vote, to make voting more expensive, in fact, to force American families to pay billions of dollars just to register to vote. Democrats want a country where every American citizen can vote. That's why we champion bills like the Freedom to Vote Act, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and the Native American Voting Rights Act, not the SAVE Act. I fiercely oppose this anti-American bill. I urge every one of my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats alike, to defeat this extremist anti-voter SAVE Act. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back time. The distinguished gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for his remaining 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The SAVE Act is clear. Only U.S. citizens should vote in U.S. elections. Let's summarize the arguments here. My colleagues on this side of the aisle believe that only U.S. citizens should vote in U.S. elections, and we should keep it that way. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle just moments ago said that there's no appreciable illegal voting. Well, how much illegal voting should be allowed in the United States of America? My opinion, no non-citizens should vote in U.S. elections. We can go down and look at the data. Illinois had to remove 600 non-citizens from their voter rolls. Pennsylvania had to remove 10,000 non-citizens from their voter rolls. Georgia, 1,600 non-citizens attempted to register. And in our nation's capital, where they allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections, this past November, 388 non-citizens voted here in our nation's capital municipal elections. You'll hear the argument from my colleagues across the aisle that it's already illegal to vote if you're a non-citizen in a federal election. Well, I'd tell them, as I said earlier, it's already illegal to evade Border Patrol and to come into this country. But Joe Biden was happy to not enforce the law. Millions of illegal immigrants have come into the United States of America. And the National Voter Registration Act is drafted by this body. If you broke it, you got to fix it. We got to fix the voting laws. The National Voter Registration Act requires states to give voter registration materials when an individual comes to get a driver's license. So in states that give driver's license to illegal aliens, like the state of Illinois, just to the south of my home state of Wisconsin, they're handed voter registration materials. Mr. Speaker, I view that as insane. We should be making sure that only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. You'll hear arguments about it's burdensome. Mr. Speaker, I think it's absurd that we're protecting beer more than we're protecting ballots. You have to show a photo ID when you go in to buy a six-pack of beer. You should have to go in and show that you're a U.S. citizen when you register to vote. It's just that simple. And I remind my colleagues that we had this debate in this chamber last Congress. 5 Democrats joined us in voting for this bill. Well, in a few moments, we'll be voting, Mr. Speaker. It'll be darn interesting to see how many Democrats have the courage to come across the line and say, yes, only U.S. citizens should vote in U.S. elections. My colleagues should support this bill, and I yield back.
All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 294, the previous question is ordered on the bill. The questions on the engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to amend the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 to require proof of United States citizenship to register an individual to vote in elections for federal office and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Ms. Johnson of Texas moves to recommit the bill H.R. 22 to the Committee on House Administration.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. All those in favor shall say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. The motion to concur in the Senate amendment to the House Concurrence Resolution 14 if ordered. The motion to recommit H.R. 22 and the passage of H.R. 22 if ordered. The first vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, remaining electronic votes will be conducted on 5-minute votes. Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 14 will now resume. The clerk will report the title.
House Concurrent Resolution 14, Concurrent Resolution establishing the congressional budget for the United States government for fiscal year 2025 and setting forth the appropriate budgetary levels for fiscal years 2026 through 2034, Senate Amendment.
The question is on the motion offered by the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Arrington. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to consider is.
I request the
Excuse
yeas
me,
and nays.
gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested by the gentleman from Wisconsin. Those favoring a vote for the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
all members voted? Does any member wish to change their vote?
On this vote, the yeas are 216, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is a question on agreeing to the motion to recommit on H.R. 22 offered by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Motion to recommit H.R. 22 offered by Ms. Johnson of Texas.
Question is on the agreeing to the motion to recommit. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
1 minute. All members voted. Did anyone wish to change their vote?
On this vote, the yeas are 211, the nays are 215. The motion is not adopted. Question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
Oh.
The ayes have it. The bill is passed.
Mr. Speaker,
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. The members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 220, the nays are 208. The bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Chair will remind all persons in the gallery they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings is in violation of the rules of the House. The chair lays before the House an enrolled resolution.
Figures no. Then what?
House Joint Resolution 24, resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title V United States Code of the rules submitted by the Department of Energy relating to Energy Conservation Program, energy conservation standards for walk-in coolers and walk-in freezers.
House will be in order. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a remarkable constituent and community leader, Alan Seaback, Sr. of Tappan, New York. Alan is a lifelong resident of Tappan and a U.S. Navy veteran who served our nation during the Korean War. But his service didn't stop when he returned home. In fact, it was just getting started. He joined the Volunteer Fire Association of Tappan in 1950, and for nearly 75 years, he's been a cornerstone of the department. Alan served as chief of the Tappan Fire Department from 1965 to 1967, and again from 1972 to
to 1974. He later became fire commissioner, a role he held for 27 years, 13 of them as chairman of the district. Alan's leadership, mentorship, and tireless dedication to the safety and well-being of his neighbors have left a lasting mark not only on the department, but on the entire Tappan community. As one local fire leader put it, Alan Seebach is the Tappan Fire Department. I want to thank Alan for everything he's done for the people of Tappan, of Rockland County, and of New York's 17th District. His legacy of service is the best of who we are, and I am proud to call him a friend. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor the 10-year anniversary of Beyond Legal Aid, a vital community-driven legal advocacy organization that has spent the last decade advancing justice from the ground up. They've successfully built a grassroots network of lawyers and advocates to address critical legal needs to close the equity gap in justice. Their work is grounded in fundamental truth that an injustice to one member of our community is an injustice to all of us. Beyond Legal Aid places impacted communities at the center of their advocacy, reshaping what legal support can and should look like. Beyond Legal Aid in Chicago has worked for 10 years to inspire and enact change across my district and has represented over 5,000 clients in immigration and housing cases. As an ardent supporter of community-driven grassroots activism, I commend Beyond Legal Aid for 10 years of fighting against systematic inequities. I sincerely appreciate your dedication and look forward to supporting Beyond Legal Aid in building towards a world where justice is not a privilege, but a birthright. I yield back.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Nebraska seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to recognize the life of Harry Lynn of Scottsbluff, Nebraska, a family man, beloved community member, and World War II veteran. Sadly, Harry passed away last week at the age of 102. Despite the initial draft deferment due to significant visual impairment, Harry enlisted in the U.S. Army, where he became recognized as one of the Army's top 3 Morse code operators. He became a Morse code instructor and rose to the rank of Staff Sergeant. This year, we celebrate the 80th anniversary of the Allied victory because of the sacrifices of heroes like Harry. His determination to do his duty, despite personal adversity, displayed the true Nebraskan spirit to answer the call of service in one of the most challenging times in our nation's history. He and each of America's World War II veterans deserve our deepest gratitude and most sincere thanks. On April 2nd, Harry and his daughter Sherry were tragically killed in a car accident. I extend my condolences to the family members and celebrate the life of this American patriot. Harry's memory and example of service will live on in our hearts. Thank you. I yield back.
For what purposes does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to celebrate my Florida Gators, the University of Florida men's basketball team, for winning the 2025 National Championship. It's their 3rd title and the first since back-to-back Gator wins in 2007. In a heart-stopping final, mostly my heart, they erased a 12-point second-half deficit to defeat the amazing Houston Cougars 65-63. Under Coach Golden, they showed the resilience, discipline, and heart that epitomizes Gator athletics. Walter Clayton Jr., the tournament MVP, led that charge, proving time and again that he and his teammates rise to the occasion when it matters most. But this championship is more than just a trophy. It's a symbol of UF's excellence, both on and off the court. It reflects the strength of our state's public universities and the pride we all share as Floridians. The Gator Nation is still humming, and as a proud alum, along with my dad, brother, husband, and all 3 of my kids, let me just say it's great to be a Florida Gator. So congratulations to all the players and coaches and all the students and alumni who cheered them on. Our Gator boys stayed hot and brought a title home. Go Gators! I yield back.
For what purposes does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
In America, you can't drive a car, board a plane, buy fireworks without an ID proving you are who you say you are. So white folks are allowed to vote to decide the future of this country without proving that they are a citizen first. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in honor of the House passing the SAVE Act just moments ago. It's common sense that only American citizens should be able to vote in American elections. Congressman Chip Roy's SAVE Act will close election loopholes by ensuring that every state requires voters to provide proof of citizenship before registering to vote. When non-citizens go to the ballot box, the electoral system is compromised and American votes are diluted. The American people have the right to determine the future of our country, and we refuse to be disenfranchised by illegal votes. I was proud to support the SAVE Act when it passed the House today. And Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
For what purposes does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize the remarkable achievement of a teacher from Wilson, North Carolina. Mr. Johannes Amarino, a high school science teacher at Sally B. Howard School, has been awarded the Burroughs Welcome Fund 2025 Career Award for STEM teachers. The award honors outstanding educators who are committed to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The grant will be used to set up science equipment and living labs in the school's new high school building and provide essential supplies. The award includes $175,000 over 5 years. STEM will play a crucial role in the future of education, and Mr. Marino is proving that North Carolina is leading the way. Congratulations to Sally B. Howard School. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Mississippi seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in honor of the life and legacy of Ryan Griffin, a devoted father, community leader, and an accomplished professional who left an indelible mark on Laurel, Mississippi, and beyond. Ryan was a man of service, whether through his career in journalism or communications, his leadership in civic organizations like Kiwanis and United Way, or his unwavering dedication to his hometown. From the football field at West Jones High School to the halls of the University of Southern Mississippi, Ryan exemplified leadership, integrity, and a passion for bringing people together. Above all, Ryan's love for his family, his faith, and his community defined his life. His impact will be felt for generations to come. My prayers are with his children, his loved ones, and all who had the privilege of calling him a friend. May we honor the legacy and continue his commitment to service and kindness. And Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my rule.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to remember my beloved friend and Montgomery County legend, Jack Fitzgerald, who passed away this week at the age of 89. He will be sharply missed by friends, family, and customers of Fitzgerald Auto Malls up and down the East Coast. Jack's life embodied the restless, adventuresome spirit of American entrepreneurial business at its very best. Over the course of his extraordinary life, he built Bethesda Auto from a single storefront in the early 1950s into a massive success with dealerships across Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Florida. An old-fashioned businessman devoted to the community, he was an eloquent champion of customer safety, consumer protection, and employee well-being. He pioneered the installation of child safety seats before it became an industry standard. He was friends not just with CEOs of auto companies, but with Ralph Nader. Remarkably, Jack transferred his company to employee stock ownership over the last year before his death. His legacy now lives on in his employees and in everybody in Montgomery County, Maryland who loved him. Please join me in saluting the life of Jack Fitzgerald, who was a pillar of our community, a local hero, and may his memory be a blessing. Yield back.
Purposes, does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Lori Frazier Bearden, a resident of Savannah, Georgia, who will serve as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Employment and Training Administration, ETA, at the United States Department of Labor. Ms. Bearden earned her bachelor's degree in political science from Columbus State University in Georgia and her master's degree in public administration from Auburn University. In this role, Ms. Bearden will assist Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer in executing President Donald Trump's mission of prioritizing American workers, veterans, and retirees. She will work to advance the ETA's mission of contributing to the more efficient functioning of the U.S. labor market by providing high-quality job training, employment, labor market information, and income maintenance services, primarily through state and local workforce development programs. Ms. Bearden's dedication to public service and expertise in navigating complex policy landscapes make her an asset to the Trump administration. Ms. Bearden, congratulations on this exciting achievement. We all look forward to watching you succeed and wish you the best in your new role. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor U.S. Coast Guard Admiral Linda Fagan, a trailblazer. Her decades of service have strengthened our nation and brought pride to the people of Ohio. Throughout her distinguished 40-year career, Admiral Fagan broke barriers. She led with strength of purpose. As the first woman to serve as Commandant of the United States Coast Guard and the first woman to lead a branch of our armed forces, she made history with integrity and fortitude. Her service spanned all 7 continents. From the icy waters of the poles to ports around the world, she safeguarded our nation's interests with professionalism and resolve. Her deep expertise in marine safety is unmatched, and she holds the title of Gold Ancient Trident, the first of that honor and a symbol of enduring leadership in one of the Coast Guard's most critical missions. Yet, patriots must acknowledge with concern the abrupt dismissal of Admiral Fagan just 1 day after a presidential inauguration with only 3 hours' notice. Actions that politicize our armed services undermine the trust and stability of these institutions. Admiral Fagan's legacy is not one of partisanship, but of patriotism. Let us honor and thank her for her service. Our military remains above political winds, guided as she was by our Constitution, principle, high professionalism, and a deep love of country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Service Admiral. Now we have the watch.
For what
Thank you,
purpose
and
does
I
the
yield
gentleman
back.
from Ohio seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize the Girl Scouts of Western Ohio. These hardworking and dedicated scouts are agents for positive change in their communities and work every day to create a better world. In 2024, 44 senior and ambassador Girl Scouts from the Girl Scouts of Western Ohio earned the prestigious Gold Award. In pursuit of this distinction, each scout identified a specific issue close to their hearts and utilized teamwork and collaboration to effect positive change in their community, leaving a lasting impact. Carolyn Koch, a graduate of Blanchester High School, created a Build Community Through Theater program to engage youth and help them develop confidence. Promoting drama education in her community, Caroline invested her time and energy in creating a middle school drama camp free of charge for 5th to 8th grade students in the Blanchester local school district. The Girl Scout promise reads, "On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law." Carolyn and each of the other recipients of the Girl Scout Gold Award are the embodiment of this promise. I would also like to recognize the parents and scout leaders who supported each Girl Scout on their path to this milestone. Your support made all the difference. Congratulations, Girl Scouts, especially Carolyn. Your investment in our community is appreciated, and Ohio can't wait to see what's in store for you next. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, it is an honor to serve as the ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and today I rise to recognize one veteran in particular, my great uncle, Manso Takahashi. Uncle Mon served in the legendary 442nd Infantry Battalion and gave his life in service to our nation on this very day 80 years ago. He gave the last full measure of devotion while his family, my grandparents and parents, were incarcerated in camps simply because they were Japanese Americans. Uncle Mon's story is just one of nearly 18,000 Japanese American soldiers who embodied the motto, "Go for broke." They risked everything for a country that had denied them so much because they believed in the promise of America. But that promise is fragile. The Trump administration erased the story of the 442nd from the Army's website and now seeks to gut the care our veterans have earned. We cannot let that happen. To truly honor our veterans, we must defend their legacy,
The gentleman's time has expired.
and uphold the nation they fought to build.
The gentleman's time has
We
expired.
owe them, Mr. Speaker.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, this morning, all 216 of my GOP colleagues, along with just 4 out of 212 Democrats, passed the SAVE Act, which is a bill that mandates proof of citizenship for those registering to vote. I think most people think that's already required and mandated. But guess what? Even though it's in the Constitution, federal law mandates that only citizens can vote, there are states that have systems in place that allow non-citizens to register. And guess what? They vote. To address this problem, the SAVE Act also requires states to establish a program to remove non-citizens from their voter rolls. And just last month, even though Iowa did what it could to correct this problem, 277 non-citizens were on the voter rolls and 35 of them voted. That may not sound consequential, but there are races that are decided by less than that. The votes against the SAVE Act today were nothing more than to allow non-citizens to vote in the United States of America. I think that falls into the category of the 80-20 position. All I know, Mr. Speaker, is a vote against the SAVE Act today was a vote against American citizens' voting rights. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I am so proud to honor Isaac Samuelson, a young leader from Long Island and a member of Boy Scout Troop 613 based in West Hempstead. Isaac spearheaded a project to preserve over 20 years' worth of religious texts, prayer books, and educational materials that had just been stashed away somewhere in his synagogue. He, along with his family, friends, and Troop 613 members, spent hours organizing, ensuring that important religious materials could be preserved and used by future generations. Isaac exemplifies the values of Boy Scouts and civic responsibility. He is a role model, not just for young people in our community, but for all of us. Thank you, Isaac, for your leadership in our community. I am so proud to be your representative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I rise to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you. Today marks 46 years since Taiwan Relations Act became law. This landmark bill has strengthened the partnership with Taiwan and shaped America's foreign policy in the Indo-Pacific region. And I want to recognize that Taiwan is a trusted leader in freedom, democracy, and trade, and is also a needed partner in security against shared interests or shared threats. As chairwoman of the East Asia and Pacific Subcommittee, I have worked on bipartisan bills to give Taiwan a rightful seat at the table in international organizations such as WHO and IMF. And I led the charge to track and ensure efficient delivery of weapons that Taiwan has purchased from the United States. This year, I introduced a bipartisan, bicameral bill to enhance U.S.-Taiwan economic and trade ties. Our partnership with Taiwan is more important than ever. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the president posted on social media, quote, "This is a great time to buy." And then shortly after that, he paused his tariff plan, the very one that sent markets into a tailspin. The market bounced back, although it's down again. And the president celebrated in the Oval Office with top financial executives. And they celebrated at whose expense? The parents who watch their kids' college savings accounts get depleted, the retirees who rely on their investments to carry them through their remaining years, and the small business owners, including many in my district, who don't know how to plan and don't know how to keep the lights on at this point. This wreaked havoc on millions of Americans, and those Americans also deserve to know about what happened and who profited off of it. Did the financial executives know about what was going to happen? Did the president's donors know? Who knew and who profited from this great time to buy tweet and everything that was leading up to it? We need a full investigation into what happened and who profited from it. The American people deserve better. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I somberly rise to recognize the tremendous life and career of the Honorable Judge Michael J. Kramer from Ligonier, Indiana. Judge Kramer was a well-recognized titan of the judicial branch in the state and beyond. Prior to his sudden passing last month, he achieved the legendary feat of becoming the longest-serving judge in Noble County history. His many accomplishments include being named Distinguished Hoosier by former Governor Frank O'Bannon, being named Volunteer of the Year by Drug Free Indiana, and becoming Advocate of the Year for the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. Michael was serving as the chair of Drug Free Noble County and was a member and former president of the Noble County Bar Association at the time of his passing. Noble County was lucky to have lived under the unbiased and truth-seeking gavel of Judge Kramer. He will be sorely missed by his surviving family and the community he loved so much. Despite his unexpected passing, the institutions he helped form and the community he made safer will continue to honor his memory and legacy. The world can use more men like Judge Michael Kramer. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the Fredericksburg Nationals on winning their first ever Carolina League Championship. Under manager Joe Lowry's leadership, the team made a thrilling late-season run and delivered a dominant performance to win the championship. Standout prospects like Seaver King and Travis Sikora showed incredible talent, while veteran leaders brought unity and heart to the clubhouse. My team was honored to represent a congratulatory letter when joining your recent ring ceremony and celebration. This win is not just a triumph for the team, it's a moment of pride for owner Art Silber and his family and the entire Fredericksburg community. Congratulations to the Fredericksburg Nats on the unforgettable season and championship well earned. I yield back.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart to honor the lives of Christopher Camp and his beloved sons, David and Thomas, of Bristol Borough, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. A father and two sons bound by an unshakable love and now mourned in the wake of an unfathomable tragedy. Mr. Speaker, Chris Camp was a man who chose compassion not as an occasional act, but as a daily calling across every corner of our community. He was known not only for what he did, but for how he did it. With an unwavering commitment to lifting up those most in need, he was, in every sense of the word, a guardian of the vulnerable. To the homeless, to those struggling with mental health challenges, Chris was a lifeline. He met people in their lowest moments and helped them chart a path back to hope and dignity. And even in his final moments, as Thomas struggled, Chris and his son David did what they have always done. They responded with love. And in their courageous attempt to save him, they gave their own lives, a sacrifice that speaks to the very core of who they are as human beings. Mr. Speaker, the magnitude of this loss has reverberated throughout Bristol Borough and our entire Bucks County community and far beyond. May we remember Chris for how he lived with open hands, an open heart, and a tireless devotion to the forgotten and to the unseen. Today, Mr. Speaker, let us lift up the Camp family in our prayers, and let us commit to carrying forward Chris's legacy, to serve with compassion, to love without condition, and to never turn away from those who need us most. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of Ann Evans, who was called home on February the 12th. There are some people so important and central to a city and a community that their lives become intertwined. Ann Evans' life and the life of San Diego for the last 60 years were magnificently intertwined. Ann was America's finest lady, and she made San Diego America's finest city. Every major advancement in the last 60 years that made San Diego great, from developing our beloved Mission Bay to redeveloping our urban core, you could find Ann right in the middle of it. Ann was a doer. She was fearless, brilliant, and a trailblazer, always anxious to make things better for everyone. This is why she became a leading philanthropist and gave back generously to the city she loved and taught her children to do the same. The city of San Diego's heart is broken with the passing of Ann. We would have never become America's finest city without her. We pray for her family, her greatest legacy to our city, and we thank God for the life of Ann Evans, the guardian of San Diego. Rest in peace, Ann Evans, and job well done. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, it is my honor today to wish the happiest of birthdays to my dear friend and brother in Christ, Richard Lockamy. I have known Richard for as long as I can remember. With age, the more I admire and respect and appreciate Richard is growing with every day. Briefly, Richard grew up in Benson, North Carolina, the oldest of four. He attended Shaw University, followed by North Carolina State University, where he received a graduate degree in mathematics. He married Lena Lockamy, with whom he shared 48 wonderful years of marriage before Lena passed into her eternal heavenly home nearly 5 years ago. Richard and Lena had one son, Marcus, who in his own right is now a wonderful man. Professionally, Richard has worked at some of the world's leading companies, and for decades he has taught at the high school and collegiate level. But despite his many professional accomplishments, what truly set Richard apart in my life and in the life of many others is his faithful service to his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. With each day, in every encounter, Richard's witness is as apparent as it is infectious. I saw this personally in the Raleigh men's class of Bible Study Fellowship.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Where for nearly 40 years, Richard met with dozens of men each week.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Richard, happy birthday.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Oregon seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today, House Republicans betrayed their mothers, their sisters, their daughters, and every woman in their life. The so-called SAVE Act is an anti-woman, anti-democracy voter suppression bill cloaked in lies about election integrity. With this vote, House Republicans have jeopardized access to the ballot box for nearly 70 million American women. That isn't just a number, it's personal. It's the working mom in Sandy who can't afford to take time off work to go get paperwork. It's the woman in Portland whose name no longer matches her birth certificate and doesn't have $160 for a passport. In the year 2025, I cannot believe I have to come to the House floor to argue for a woman's right to vote. But I will fight this Republican effort to disempower women today and every single day if I need to. As a mother, I will not allow this country to continue to strip our daughters of their rights. We cannot force them to grow up in a world where they have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers. I call on my Senate colleagues to show courage and defeat this despicable bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
I'd like to speak for a minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
On committees I was on yesterday, immigration was a topic that was brought up, and it seemed apparent to me that the party on the other side of the aisle didn't understand why we have immigration laws. First of all, it's a complete insult to the over 800,000 people who are sworn in as new citizens in this country annually. Secondly, we have to make sure the next generation of Americans here think like Americans fit in our culture, which means they're law-abiding. Just in general, the idea of having 1 million people come here without breaking the law to come here or say they need asylum when they don't means they're not going to fit in with our culture. But finally, I want to share a word from Mark Ryle, back from my state legislative days of the Carpenters Union. Again and again, he'd come into my office saying that his guys, his union carpenters, were being undercut by people coming here illegally. And he demanded that we crack down on that. Illegal immigration drives down wages of Americans who are already here.
The gentleman's
we heard
time
that
has expired.
yesterday as the Democrats were claiming that
The gentleman's
if
time
we
has
kicked out the
expired.
illegals, we'd have the cost of things go up, as they will. Thank
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in firm opposition to the Republican passage of the so-called SAVE Act, an act of legislative voter suppression that will make it much harder for most people to vote, the cornerstone of our democracy. This bill, which just passed the Republican House, is designed to combat a non-existent problem. Non-citizens are already not allowed to vote under federal law. Instances of fraudulent non-citizen voting are exceedingly rare. You are literally more likely to get struck by lightning than encounter non-citizen voting. To address this made-up problem, Republicans have passed a draconian bill that would make it extremely difficult and costly for service members, married women, and disadvantaged Americans to register to vote. In most cases, it requires a person to present their birth certificate matching a current ID. There are no exceptions for the 70 million American women who change their married name. This bill also mandates in-person visits to register to vote, disenfranchising potentially tens of thousands of deployed service members as well as Native Americans in rural areas like northern Arizona. This is a shocking act of voter suppression. I yield back. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Republicans just passed their budget plan. President Trump's big, beautiful bill again. The first version didn't cut enough from critical programs like Medicaid and SNAP. This budget is a direct attack on the working and middle classes, all while handling more than $7 trillion in tax breaks for billionaires. Over 196,000 residents in my district are at risk of losing Medicaid coverage, including 73,000 children and 27,000 seniors in one district. 74,000 people who count on SNAP may not be able to put food on the table. People who are covered through the Affordable Care Act will see premiums rise by an average of almost $3,000 a year. This is what President Trump called beautiful. It's anything but. This budget won't lower costs. Coupled with the president's thoughtless tariff policies, it will make life more expensive for our neighbors. We're making a beeline to a MAGA recession and perhaps a MAGA depression. This is reverse Robin Hood, stealing from the lower and middle classes to benefit the wealthiest.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Un-American. I yield my time back, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New Mexico seek recognition?
Good morning. I ask for unanimous consent to address the House and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I want to take a moment today to share a story of why we are fighting and who we are fighting for. Every day, this administration claims they're trying to make America healthy again, and yet everything they are doing seems to indicate that they are trying to make us sicker again. They've fired 10,000 HHS health professionals, and on this floor this week, the GOP passed a reconciliation package that would cut Medicaid by billions of dollars. Every day, my constituents ask, how can this cruel agenda continue? Yesterday, I met with Rochelle Titman, a mom of 4 who was diagnosed with cancer when she was 29 weeks pregnant 8 years ago. But by the grace of God, her family, and the medical advancements made possible by the HHS, by the National Institutes of Health, by the CDC, she is here today, and her youngest daughter, Ray, is in the 2nd grade. These are the people we are fighting for. This is why we are fighting back, and this is why we oppose this cruel agenda. I yield back.
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., April 10th, 2025. I hereby designate the period from Thursday, April 10th, 2025, through Sunday, April 27th, 2025, as a district work period under Clause 13 of Rule 1. Signed, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. And I rise today to initially extend greetings to all, especially those who are traveling over this season of resurrection. In my church, I'm a Christian, we commemorate and celebrate Easter. So I want to let everyone know that I appreciate those who do, and to those who do not, I understand. But I also want to give a special expression of gratitude and thanks to the thousands of persons who have literally called my office, sent cards, greeted me along life's way to give me a pep talk or to simply say to me, we appreciate what you're doing. It means a lot to me to have people that I do not know, many of whom I will never meet and greet, to simply say to me, we want you to continue to do what you're doing. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, I have been censured. I have been censured. I was censured, but not silenced. Censured, but not silenced. I am here today because I was censured, but not silenced. And today, as a person who still speaks truth to power, also speaks truth about power. Speaking truth to power is not as difficult as it is to speak truth about power. To speak truth to power, you but only have to go to power and say, there is a problem, and you and I can solve it. That's speaking truth to power. But when you speak truth about power, you go to power and say, there is a problem, and you are it. I speak truth about power and to power. And today I'm going to speak truth to power as it relates to the president's tariff. The president's tariff. One has to ponder why the President of the United States of America would put so much emphasis on these tariffs, emphasizing the tariffs for many, many years, I'm told, but put emphasis on the tariffs to the extent that he nearly drove the economy into a ditch. Colloquial way of saying driving the economy into an area wherein it would suffer greatly. The president put a lot of emphasis on this. He was just obsessed with the tariffs. And we have to ask ourselves, why was he obsessed with the tariff? And I'm going to answer these questions, and I'm going to answer this question as it relates to the president's obsession and how it will impact you. It's important for you to understand how this obsession would impact you, how it would impact billionaires, how it would impact your life. I will answer the question, how it will impact you. It's important for me to call to your attention that the president has a book that you are familiar with. It is styled The Art of the Deal. The Art of the Deal. Well, I want to introduce you to the president's Art of the Steal. Art of the Steal. A steal can be an underhanded way of acquiring something. The art of the steal. Here is how it works. The president, with his tariffs, will continue. At one point, it was going to be unimaginable, but he has reduced it. Let's just say 10%. There's a 10% tariff. This tariff is collected at the point of entry into the United States of goods that an importer desires to purvey in this country. He wants to sell it, or she wants to sell it. They want to sell it. They want to sell these goods. So they have to pay this tariff. And this tariff has to be paid that the president would add to the goods. Let's say you have something that costs $40,000 coming into the country, tariff of 10%. So that's going to give you an additional $4,000. This additional $4,000 is collected at the point of entry, and the person importing has to pay the tariff. Has to pay the tariff. This is the Trump tariff tax at this point. And when that tariff is paid, that money goes into the Treasury of the United States of America. The same place that your tax dollars will go, into the Treasury of the United States of America. Tariff, collected, port of entry, let's say $4,000 on a $40,000 item, if it's a 10% tariff. And when it is collected, it goes again, important to remember, into the Treasury. Now, that person who imports and has this additional tax now to deal with will do what you will see when you buy something and you're in a state that has a sales tax. You'll see that the item costs X amount of dollars. If it's something that costs $40,000 and there's a 10% sales tax, then you'll see that there's a tax on there, sales tax of 10% or $4,000. Well, here is where the stealth comes in. Here's where the art of the steal begins. When the person sells that $40,000 item and has to add that additional $4,000 to it, that person becomes somewhat of a tax collector for the Trump tariff tax steal. That person who purchased this item, brought it into the country, paid $40,000 for it, and then had to pay $4 more, making it $44,000, adds that $4,000 to that product when you buy it. That $4,000 is added. The unfortunate thing is, it's not done the way a sales tax is done. It's not noted that you're paying it. You pay it because it's a part of buying the product. But there's nothing that will say this is the Trump tariff tax steal. It won't be there. It's a very stealthy way of doing business. Most people don't realize that they're paying this tariff, this tax, this steal, if you will. They do. But we really haven't gotten to the essence of what's important here. That money, that $4,000 that was paid at the point of entry, now collected from you because the person who is selling, purveying, does not want to pay that because they're operating possibly on a thin profit margin. They already have an overhead that they have to consider. So you pay it. Now it goes into the Treasury. And here's where it gets really stealthy. The steal gets stealthy. Because at some point the president is desiring to say, I gave you a tax break. You got a tax break from the president. Well, here is the truth. That tax break that you think you're getting or may get and the billionaires will get, that's the money that came out of your pocket. The president was desiring to get this huge tariff because that would be more money in the coffer coming out of your pocket so that it could then be some of it. You don't get it back dollar for dollar. You might get some of it back. Some. You may not get any depending on your tax circumstance. The billionaires will get plenty. You may not get any. This is a stealthy way of doing business. It's a steal. This is why it is the art of the steal that has been developed by this president so that he can take money out of your pocket, put it into the Treasury, and then say later on, you now have a tax break. I think that people who understand this will understand why tariffs are not always a great benefit to you. They can be a benefit in some circumstances, but remember, the president was putting a tariff on some 90 plus countries. He was putting a tariff on any and every country that he could find a means by which he could tax with a tariff. And some places didn't have people to actually tax with a tariff, just animal life. But he was desperate because he wants to get money into the coffer, the Treasury of the United States of America, so that he can then say to you, you have now a tax break. Some of you may, billionaires will, have a tax break, but it's really money out of your pocket that is being returned to you in a diminished fashion. This is the art of the steal as perfected or as is being perfected by our president. Our president understands also that there are other ways to get money into this coffer, the Treasury. You can get money into the Treasury by simply having Medicare or Medicaid have some cuts into these two programs, these two health care programs. And this can be done because there has been an indication in this House that some $880 billion will be cut or should be cut. I'm going to fight it. Attempt to cut. I'm going to fight it from the committee that has jurisdiction over Medicaid and Medicare. $880 billion. You can't cut $880 billion out of the appropriations that would emanate from that committee without cutting into Medicaid or Medicare. You have to do it. Well, when that is done, that money goes into the Treasury. So now you add the stealth tax, which was a tariff, and you add the money that you're saving now by putting people who need health care in harm's way as it relates to their health care, put that money in. And when I say people who need it, I'm talking about people who have long-term illnesses and they're seniors, they're dual eligible persons, may qualify for Medicaid and Medicare, so they need these long-term hospitalization programs available to them. That can be cut. Talking about children in this country, approximately 40% of all children benefit from Medicaid at some point in their lives. That can be cut. These cuts will then go into the cuts to children that would impact children and impact seniors, would go into the coffer. And again, Add this to the stealth tariff tax, and you have more money that you can now pass back to people who are going to get a break and say, here's what the government is sending you by way of cutting taxes and giving you additional money. Friends, I conclude that this is a very stealthy way of doing business when people don't always understand. I believe that if people truly understand how the president is amassing this tax break for billionaires, I think they're going to be exceedingly upset. And there are many ways to express how upset you are. You can do this always peacefully. Many are going to protest. Others will do it at the polls. A good many of my colleagues who are participating as persons who are aiding and abetting, if you will, many of them will find that, as they are finding out currently, that they are going to be received in less than a very warm way when they find themselves having town meetings. They're already experiencing this. That's why many of them are not having their town meetings. But they're going to experience it also when we have an election, because people aren't going to forget this. They're not going to forget how the president desperately tried to tax them so that he could then return money, some to them if they would qualify, but much to billionaires who would qualify. This is, in my opinion, a shameful and disgraceful way for the president to tell people that they're going to get a tax break when it's really their money that is being returned to them by way of this tariff. I would also remind people that as we move forward, I have indicated that impeachment is imminent. The filing of articles of impeachment is imminent. We are currently in a countdown to impeachment. Now, those who know me know that I wouldn't say this if I were not going to move on with it. And I am. We will have articles of impeachment filed. I cannot tell you what the vote will be, and there are some who would say, well, you shouldn't file the articles of impeachment if you can't win. No, you need to know where people stand. You really do. We need to know. I heard a member just yesterday indicate that we need to have a certain thing brought before the House to understand where people are. It is not unusual for us to have votes to find out where people are on certain issues. And this is no exception. And the first articles of impeachment may not succeed. The second may not succeed. But having laid the foundation for the president's impeachment in the past, I know that impeachment can succeed. And I also know that should Democrats reclaim the House and the Senate by margins that are sufficient to not only impeach but to convict, I believe that the president can be removed from office. He talks of having another term. Well, Mr. President, you're not going to have another term. That's not going to happen. But I do know that you have incited persons to come to the Capitol, the citadel of democracy, and engage in an insurrection. So I don't know what you have up your sleeve, but I do know that we will prevent you from having a third term. And the best way to do it is to not have you finish this term. And the best way to do this is to have you impeached and convicted and removed from office. It can be done. I'm telling you it can be done. The law says it can be done. We but only have to have the will to do it. The way is before us. The will is what is necessary to implement the way to an impeachment and a removal of Donald John Trump as president of the United States of America. It would be the appropriate thing because he is unfit to be president, unfit to enforce the laws of the land in such a way as to bring honor to the process. Unfit when you consistently, repeatedly flout the laws, flout the notion of due process. When you would have agents of the state approach a female and approach her with persons who would surround her, and then pull up a mask, and then take her away, all in plain clothes, mask. I don't believe that the American people want to see that kind of episode take place in this country. It looks like we have secret police. America is not a country with secret police that come and take you away from your home to some distant state where you're not known, where you don't have resources. Don't give you any due process. This is not America. The president is destroying the lawful judicial processes that we have enjoyed. He is chipping away at them. And if the president can do it for a person who is here for whatever reasons, the president can do it to any one of us, especially when the president believes that you don't have to allow a person to say, hey, you have the wrong person. I didn't do that. Doesn't matter, because the president believes that he has the sole authority by and through his agents to determine who can stay and who must leave. And unfortunately, someone who should be here is not here as a result of the president's behavior. The president is harmful to the processes that we have enjoyed in this country. He is unfit to be president. He is also unfit because he disrespects the judiciary. When he loses a case, it's always the judge's fault. And what is amazing to me is that I have colleagues who are buying into that it's the judge's fault. Let's impeach the judge because it's the judge's fault. Always the judge. Always the judge. Never his fault. Always the judge. When we start this process of having the person who holds the highest office in the land continually say that judges are not fair when they are dealing with him and things that he would have done, when we allow that, we are now sending a signal to the rest of society that the judges are the reason why we're not succeeding, the reason why we can't have whatever it is that we want and can't acquire, and we have to take it to court. It's always the judges. At some point, people will have a disrespect for the law and the process that will cause others to disrespect the country. People invest in this country because they know that we have a good judiciary, that it is a process that has been in place and that will be honored. They invest in this country also because they know that your money is safe here. You invest in our bills, our bonds, it's safe. We have stability, except when you do as the president has just done, and that is tariff some 90 countries and do it in such a way as to cause people to start to equivocate when it comes to our bonds, our notes. And when that happens, you can see how the president backs off. He understood at last that he was making a terrible mistake, and he backed off. He has extended what he calls a 90-day, I would call it pause. But I don't think he's going to go back to where he was. I don't think he will. Even he understands that he was making a serious mistake. But here's the problem with that mistake. He has hurt the brand, the American brand. He's hurt the image of the country. He has put the country in a position such that people may no longer think that this is the safest place for their investment dollars. They may not want to buy our bonds as readily. They will then, if they don't buy them readily, that will make it difficult for us to sell them to pay bills. The president is hurting the image of the United States of America. We are now seen as a country that doesn't honor its word. President negotiated with Canada and Mexico a trade deal. He breaks the trade deal. President says that he wants Canada to be the 51st state. Canada is not about to become the 51st state. I will be quite candid with you. I admire the way the Canadians have made it perfectly clear to the president that this won't happen. Someone has to stand up to him. Greenland wants to take it, wants to make Gaza a resort. The president has to understand that he is not a king. He's not the emperor. He's not a dictator. He has awesome power, but he doesn't have the power to just go around people and take what he wants. He doesn't have that kind of power, and we can't let him have that kind of power. So it's important for us to move to impeachment, because impeachment is the means by which a reckless, ruthless president can be brought into check. This is the balance that we have. When all else fails, when the Congress majority refuses to act, and when he disregards the orders of the courts, impeachment is still available. I intend to bring articles of impeachment. I don't know what the vote would be. My guess is that you're not going to get the vote required, but you will get the opportunity to see who believes in what we have said. We said that the president was a detriment to democracy. We talked about how he would harm the country if he got back into office. Let's find out if we meant that. One of the ways we'll find out is with articles of impeachment. I'm proud to serve my country. I am proud to be an American. It means something to me. And I want to protect what this country stands for in a positive way, the positive image that our country has had. The negative image I'm trying to change to a positive. But I want to protect that. It means something to me to be an American. And I want this country to be the one that people look up to as opposed to frown upon. And many do now because of the way our president behaves. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am proud to say that I'm going to yield back my time, that I am censured, but not silenced. I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the president. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight 10 ways in which the state of California is currently under federal investigation. In particular, the Newsom administration under federal investigation. Now, the New York Times recently ran a story on this topic, headlined, "Trump Takes Aim at California." The question was, why is the administration targeting California? They called it a multi-pronged assault on California that has begun in earnest. But that's actually the wrong question, to ask why the administration is targeting California. The appropriate question is, why is California so flagrantly violating federal law in so many different ways? In the article, the junior senator in our state Adam Schiff is quoted as saying that the president has a, quote, partisan vendetta against California. Senator Schiff says that he is continuing to weaponize the federal government against California. Of course, that's not it at all. Protecting the civil rights of Californians is not weaponizing the federal government. It's what the federal government is supposed to do, what it's required to do under established law. You see, what Senator Schiff and others are so upset about is that they're used to one-party rule in California being absolutely unchecked. They are used to radicalism having absolutely no counterweight. They're used to our governor, Gavin Newsom, whose only motivation is his own political self-promotion, having a supermajority legislator and other statewide elected officials that simply go along with whatever he says or does, regardless of how much damage it does to our state and regardless of how clearly it violates federal law. So when the Times asked my opinion for this article, what I said was that extreme policies and unchecked one-party rule have lowered the quality of life across our state. All Californians will benefit from greater accountability. We need balance and common sense. So I wanted to discuss today the 10 ways in which federal investigations are restoring that sense of balance and common sense and assuring compliance with the law. Number one is on the issue of men in women's sports, where the state has continued to be defiant. Recently, the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights announced a directed investigation into the California Interscholastic Federation because of its refusal to follow anti-discrimination laws related to girls and women's sports. This includes the possibility of allowing male athletes to compete in women's sports and use women's intimate facilities. Governor Newsom has received as well a letter from U.S. Education Secretary Linda McMahon warning the governor that California could lose federal funds if the state continues to allowing transgender athletes to play in girls and women's sports. As Secretary of Education, Secretary McMahon wrote, "I am officially asking you to inform the department whether you will remind schools in California to comply with federal law by protecting sex-segregated spaces and activities." She also wrote, "Allowing participation in sex-separated activities based on gender identity places schools at risk of Title IX violations and loss of federal funding." She says, "As governor, you have a duty to inform California school districts of this risk." Interestingly enough, Governor Newsom actually recently stated that he believes it's unfair what the state is doing, allowing for men to compete in women's sports, and yet he has taken absolutely no action to stop this unlawful practice. The second ongoing investigation relates to California's policy of forcing school districts and schools to keep secrets from parents about their own students, about their own children. The U.S. Department of Education's Student Privacy Policy Office has launched an investigation into the California Department of Education for alleged violations of the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act, known as FERPA, which gives parents the right to access their children's educational data. The California Department of Education, it is alleged, has abdicated the responsibilities FERPA imposes because of a new California state law that prohibits school personnel from disclosing a child's gender identity to that child's parents. So what happened in California is you have a number of school districts that have said that we're simply going to hide this information from parents. We're not going to tell parents if their child changes their name or changes their pronouns or anything like that. You then had some other districts that said, well, this is not right. We actually want to make sure that we're being open and transparent with parents. So they passed their own policies saying, no, our policy is that we believe that parents have a right to know this. What the state then did is started suing these districts, trying to get legal judgments against them, saying you are required under law to lie to parents about their children. Fortunately, those lawsuits are being rejected, but the state legislature then followed up with a statewide law saying that it is now the policy of the state that you are not allowed to communicate this information with parents, that school districts are not allowed to have any policy that allows them to communicate this information with parents. So think about the absurdity of this. In California, you have teachers are forced to use one name and one set of pronouns with a student in class. Then their parents come in for a conference and they're supposed to switch names and switch pronouns and doctor their assignments and the names written on them, which has actually been done in documented cases in California. Thankfully, this federal law is on the books, protecting the privacy right of students and the right of parents to know this information, and the Department of Education has launched a federal investigation accordingly. The third ongoing investigation relates to the issue of racial discrimination in California higher education. The Department of Justice, under Attorney General Bondi, is investigating several California universities to assess compliance with the 2023 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that ended affirmative action in college admissions. Now, this is notable because not only is this now the supreme law of the land per the recent Supreme Court decision, is that you have to have equal access, but it's also the overwhelmingly expressed will of California voters. Just a few years ago, in 2020, the supermajority legislature tried to repeal an existing state constitutional provision that forbade racial discrimination in college admissions. So they put it directly on the ballot by a supermajority. They passed a measure to put it on the ballot, but the people of California said no. Despite the campaign for this initiative having a massive, I think, 10-to-1 spending advantage, the people of California voted 57% to 43% to say, no, we want to continue to have equality under law be the policy of our state. So this investigation by Attorney General Bondi is not only about assuring compliance with federal law, but is also going to protect the clearly expressed will of the people of California. The fourth investigation relates to the crisis of anti-Semitism at our universities. The Federal Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism has announced that the Department of Justice has opened a civil pattern of practice investigation into the University of California under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The investigation will assess whether the UC is engaged in a pattern or practice of discrimination based on race, religion, and national origin against its professors, staff, and other employees by allowing an anti-Semitic hostile work environment to exist on its campuses. Attorney General Bondi said, quote, "The Department of Justice will always defend Jewish Americans, protect civil rights, and leverage our resources to eradicate institutional anti-Semitism in our nation's universities." We've seen over the last year and a half or so absolutely abhorrent, outright anti-Semitism at many universities throughout the country, including at California universities, which our Committee on Education and the Workforce did a lot of work to expose through a number of hearings. And while there have been some positive reforms that have occurred on some campuses, there are still many ongoing, very severe problems with these issues being aided and abetted in a lot of cases by university faculty and administrations. So this is an investigation into the full gamut of that activity. And then there's a related set of investigations that are looking at the extent to which students who are here on an international students are actually working to advance not only anti-Semitic, but pro-Hamas type activity. We saw, related to all of these anti-Semitic incidents on university campuses, illegal activity as well, with illegal encampments that violate the law, violate university policies, violate the civil rights of other students. We saw buildings being taken over, and we have seen connections between these activities and the agenda of Hamas and Hamas-affiliated groups. So recently, the Department of, the administration has revoked about 100 student visas at universities across California, including the University of California at Berkeley, which is part of a broader assessment of individuals who are involved in activities deemed contrary to U.S. interests. Now, this is actually a pretty small number, 100 out of 140,000 international students that are in California, but we do know that there are people who are here who are not from this country who have participated in these illegal activities, because as the president's order cites, federal law bars non-citizens from being in the U.S. if they support terrorism. And so any connection with pro-Hamas activity falls under the purview of those statutes. Indeed, the executive order from the White House quotes the president as saying that his intention is to deport Hamas sympathizers and revoke student visas. In a similar vein, UCLA has been sued in federal court in a case alleging that it enabled protesters at an encampment to block Jewish students from accessing certain campus pathways. To the extent that folks who are here on a visa were involved in that sort of illegal pro-terrorist activity, the administration is doing an assessment to take appropriate action. The sixth investigation that is going on against some of the insane and potentially illegal policies in California relates to high-speed rail, which is the biggest public infrastructure failure in United States history. I was at the train station in LA, Union Station, a couple weeks ago, where we were with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announcing this investigation specifically into the federal money that has gone into high-speed rail. The review that we launched on that day will help determine whether roughly $4 billion in taxpayer money should remain committed to the proposed project to build high-speed rail in the California Central Valley between Merced and Bakersfield. I have also requested an investigation by the FBI into how exactly it is that California has so far spent some $17 billion on this project, which was approved in 2008, so we're talking over 15 years, and has yet to lay any track. At this point, even the New York Times has said the project isn't going to be completed this century at the current pace. The overall cost has ballooned to over $130 billion. That's more than $100 billion more than it was supposed to be. The whole thing was supposed to be completed by now, per the initial projections, but now at this point, even the first segment from Bakersfield to Merced, a very modest segment, they're saying isn't even going to be completed by 2033. And indeed, just last week, there was a report from the nonpartisan legislative analysts that there's another $9 billion funding gap, and they're continuing to rely on federal funding. So this is an investigation that is ongoing, and I fully expect it will result in those funds being clawed back and hopefully then used on infrastructure projects in California that will actually serve to move people and goods, will create jobs that have positive economic value, and will actually be helpful in improving the quality of life for folks in our state. The seventh ongoing investigation relates to California's cap and trade program. An executive order from the president has directed Attorney General Bondi to identify state and local acts that may be unconstitutional or preempted by federal law. And it singles out California's cap and trade program, which sets limits on greenhouse gas emissions and then has companies buy and sell credits. As the order says, California punishes carbon use by adopting impossible caps on the amount of carbon businesses may use, all but forcing businesses to pay large sums to trade carbon credit to meet California's radical requirements. What is the result of this? Even as we have seen gas prices that have gotten much lower across the entire country, Californians continue to pay astronomical prices when they fill up their cars. Indeed, California is now some $1.60 above the national average. We have the highest gas prices in the country, higher than even Hawaii, and the major cause of that is the state's taxes and regulations and other requirements, foremost among them being this cap and trade program, which adds substantially to the price of each gallon of gas. The eighth ongoing investigation relates to the homelessness crisis in California. California is the national leader in homelessness. It is not even close. We have roughly half the unsheltered homeless in the entire country, despite spending absolutely staggering amounts of money. Indeed, over the course of the last 5 years, we have seen $24 billion spent on homelessness, and homelessness has continued to go up significantly. A recent audit actually found that the state has lost track of the money and can't even tell you where it went or what outcomes it has produced. But now the new United States Attorney for the Central District of California, Bill Asaley, has announced the formation of the Homelessness, Fraud, and Corruption Task Force, which will investigate fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption involving funds allocated towards the eradication of homelessness within the 7-county jurisdiction of the Central District of California. The task force will be comprised of federal prosecutors from the Major Fraud Section, the Public Corruption and Civil Rights Section, and the Civil Division Civil Fraud Section of the U.S. Attorney's Office. And it'll specifically look into what's going on in Los Angeles, where recently a court-ordered audit found that homelessness services provided by the city and county were, quote, disjointed and contained poor quality and integration. And there's a lot of federal money at stake at issue here, by the way. During COVID, the federal government sent $100 million in emergency aid to LA County to address homelessness, and last month, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development awarded more than $200 million to address homelessness in LA. So now there is a federal investigation ongoing, led by the U.S. Attorney's Office, into exactly what has happened to all of this money. The 9th ongoing investigation relates to concealed carry. As part of a broader review of restrictive firearms-related laws in California and other states, the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division has announced an investigation into the LA County Sheriff's Department to determine whether it is engaging in a pattern or practice of depriving ordinary law-abiding Californians of their Second Amendment rights. The release from the Attorney General's office notes that a recent federal court decision found that the law and facts were clearly in favor of 2 private plaintiffs who challenged the lengthy 18-month delays that the LA County Sheriff's Department had imposed when processing their concealed handgun license applications, and that the Civil Rights Division has reason to believe that those 2 plaintiffs are not the only ones in this county of some 8 million people experiencing long delays that are unduly burdening or effectively denying the Second Amendment rights of the people of Los Angeles. The release from the Attorney General goes on to note the ways in which the Second Amendment rights of Californians have been unduly burdened in countless ways. They call California a particularly egregious offender. In response to recent Supreme Court case law, California enacted new legislation to further restrict the ability of ordinary, law-abiding Californians to keep and bear arms. And many California localities appear to be imposing additional burdens beyond those required by California state law, including by subjecting ordinary, law-abiding Californians to expensive fees and lengthy wait times associated with applications for concealed handgun licenses. So now there will be some counterweight to these measures which are restricting the rights of Californians. In fact, there was even a recent proposal in the legislature that went to the very core of the Second Amendment that would have said that you're no longer allowed to defend yourself against an intruder who breaks into your own home. Luckily, that bill was defeated, but it just shows you how far California has gone from what is protected by the Constitution. And finally, of course, there is ongoing federal action, and this being the 10th federal action related to California when it comes to sanctuary jurisdictions. The Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security, pursuant to an executive order from the President, are looking to the maximum extent possible under federal law. They're evaluating and undertaking any lawful actions to ensure that so-called sanctuary jurisdictions, which seek to interfere with the lawful exercise of federal law enforcement operations, do not receive access to federal funds. Further, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security, per the terms of the order, are evaluating and undertaking any other lawful actions, criminal or civil, that they deem warranted based on any such jurisdiction's practices that interfere with the enforcement of federal law. When it comes to sanctuary policies, California has been the very worst offender in the country. The state has a sanctuary state policy that was passed in 2017 and is responsible for many, many tragedies that have been documented throughout our state. And then you even have jurisdictions like Los Angeles and San Diego and San Francisco that were already sanctuary jurisdictions on top of being within a sanctuary state, but are now even going further, one of them even passing what they're calling a super sanctuary jurisdiction ordinance. We have, those of us who represent districts in California that are not sanctuary jurisdictions have also asked the administration to be sure to recognize those counties and jurisdictions that are in good faith trying to comply with federal law, very much unlike jurisdictions like Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco. So these are 10 ways in which we see finally something of a check on the runaway lawlessness of the Newsom administration and a number of jurisdictions in California. And in Congress, we are very much a partner in those efforts. Indeed, I'm working on a number of measures here in Congress, in the House of Representatives, that are seeking to push back on the radical, harmful policies of the Newsom administration. For example, we recently introduced legislation to overturn Newsom's ban on gas-powered vehicles. I've introduced legislation called the No Medi-Cal for Illegal Immigrants Act, which will seek to preserve Medi-Cal benefits for American citizens at a time when the policy of expanding those benefits to everyone in the state illegally is literally bankrupting the system. And in addition to Secretary Duffy's investigation into high-speed rail's staggering failures, I've introduced legislation to assure that the high-speed rail project will be ineligible for any federal funding going forward. California has a long way to go towards restoring sanity, but these actions are very important steps, and I look forward to following these investigations as they protect the civil rights of Californians and protect our citizens against truly radical and failed policies. Mr. Speaker, today I'm excited to announce new legislation that I'm introducing along with Representative Claudia Tenney called the High Quality Charter Schools Act, which is going to be among the most significant pieces of legislation for school choice that we've had in this country in a very long time. What it will do is create a new tax credit for charitable contributions to nonprofit charter school organizations. Specifically, it'll establish a 75% federal tax credit for qualified charitable contributions made to nonprofit charter school organizations with a proven record of success, incentivizing donations to support the development of more high-quality charter schools. This could be truly significant, allowing perhaps millions of more kids in this country to gain access to charter schools. Because the reality that we see right now is that you have very successful charter schools that get tremendous results for students. For example, Success Academy in New York is the #1 school system in the entire state, but there are a limited number of seats, and it costs a lot of money to start a new school. And a lot of times, especially in states like California or New York, you are disadvantaged under state law. You have politicians like Gavin Newsom or the supermajority in California that do everything possible to try to stop you from helping your students succeed. So there are all of these obstacles that exist often under state law, as well as the inherent obstacles that exist to starting up an enterprise as complicated and complex as a school. And the federal charter school grant program has actually been critical to helping a number of charter schools start. What this legislation seeks to do is to help those that have proven to be successful to expand, to replicate their model. Because the ones that are really successful often have very long waiting lists. You can have thousands of kids on the waiting list for a school. And by the way, charter schools are required to then conduct lotteries. They can't show any sort of favoritism in their admissions or anything like that. They have to be open to all. So you have a lottery, and if you don't win the lottery, unfortunately, then you can't go to the school. And you might, if your local neighborhood school is not a good one, then your child it misses out on the opportunity to go to a high-quality school, has to end up going to a low-quality school. So the best way, probably the most effective way to expand educational opportunity and excellence in America today is to facilitate the expansion and replication of charter schools that have proven to be successful. That is precisely what this legislation does, and I'm hopeful that we'll get it passed into law, perhaps even as part of the reconciliation process, as a way to start to turn around this sharp decline in education outcomes that unfortunately is posing such a risk to our country's future. I look forward to hopefully getting bipartisan support and seeing it passed into law and seeing what it will do for so many kids across this country. Mr. Speaker, this week I introduced, along with my colleague Jay Obernolte, as well as Representatives Calvert, Fong, Valadeo, and Issa, the Election Results Accountability Act, which will restore some measure of public trust in our elections. The problem in California, one of many problems with our elections in California, is that they take forever. Not only do voters have about a month to cast their votes, it then takes about a month to actually count the votes, with updates being made periodically throughout this what's called month-long canvassing period. And you see results that flip. Someone's ahead on election night, but then somehow 3 weeks later, they're behind. Or if you're in a tight race, you're just living and dying with each update. Am I going to be the next city council or school board member, or whatever the case may be? It limits your ability to plan because you don't know if you're going to be coming into office, or you need to find some other job, or you're planning to run again, whatever the case may be. The voters don't know who's going to be their representative when they should. And so, and it also just fosters a sense of distrust in the process, and it's frankly embarrassing to our state. When you have every other state manages to get its act together, to most of them can give you the results on election night. That's kind of the way it's supposed to work. You go to the voting booth, you cast your vote, you find out who won that night. You don't find out a month later and have it change several times in the process. So this is beyond embarrassing for California, and it's time we brought some accountability. So we've introduced this legislation, the Election Results Accountability Act, which will require all states to count and publicly report no less than 90% of ballots cast in federal election within 72 hours of polls closing. Additionally, it mandates that states complete the ballot count and certify the final results within 2 weeks of Election Day. These are not onerous requirements. 90% of the votes within 3 days need to be counted, and we need to have the results within 2 weeks. It's more than, our state should be more than capable of complying with this. And by the way, even though we're requiring it in federal elections, that likely will mean we'll get the results up and down the ballot as well. This, along with measures that we passed today to the SAVE Act to require proof of citizenship in order to vote, as well as an initiative that I think is likely to be presented to California voters in the near future to require voter ID, will go a long way towards ensuring election security, election integrity, and the sense of democratic legitimacy on which our state and country's political identity depends. Mr. Speaker, this last week, I introduced legislation in the House to reverse California's ban on gas-powered vehicles. This is a special resolution under the Congressional Review Act that provides a fast-track procedure, not subject to a Senate filibuster, to overturn an agency action. In this case, it is the action of the Biden administration that gave Gavin Newsom special permission to ban gas cars in California. This is a measure that will affect almost everyone in our state. It's set to go into effect in 2035. It is utterly unrealistic, and yet it has not been subject to a vote of the people, a vote of the state legislature, or a vote of the United States Congress. But that will change soon. This measure, I believe, will pass, hopefully with bipartisan support, and will restore the ability of Californians to select the vehicle of their choice. It will also prevent massive increases in costs for Californians who are already burdened with the highest cost of living, the highest gas prices, the highest energy prices, and much more of any state in the country. I think this is a pretty common sense measure. Unfortunately, California has dragged a lot of other states along with it, with this measure, so it's truly an issue of national concern as well. And so I look forward to seeing this passed, to reversing the Biden administration's waiver under the Clean Air Act for California, and I think this will go a long way towards us restoring some sanity to our state. Mr. Speaker, this last week, as chair of the House subcommittee that covers K-12 education, I held a very important hearing on the topic of artificial intelligence in education. Now, we are in the midst of a truly unprecedented period in which AI is advancing at a mind-boggling rate in terms of its capabilities. And there's truly no end to this progress in sight. We see all of the leading labs introducing new models, it seems like every day, that demonstrate increasingly astonishing capabilities. And there are a lot of risks and concerns that tend to come to mind when people see this progress, and a lot of, I think, legitimate fears as it relates to AI and its impact on society. And it's very important that we are attentive to these concerns and taking whatever measures we can to make sure that we get these questions right. But I think that it's equally important that we make sure that the benefits of this technology, as it exists now and as it's likely to exist in the future, are understood as well. I think that there is, frankly, far less dialogue and conversation on a national level than there should be about the absolutely enormous changes that could well be ahead of us. And so I wanted to use this hearing to examine one particular domain where AI holds the potential to dramatically expand opportunity and benefit our country and bring unprecedented opportunities to American kids across the country. You know, I'm a former high school teacher, and we have in this country truly shameful achievement gaps when it comes to the educational opportunities that are available to kids depending on their zip codes. And in my view, much of that is a result of failed policies, none more so than in California, which has just about the widest achievement gaps of any state in the country. So we absolutely need to have policy reforms that bring accountability, that empower parents, that expand school choice, and that support teachers, among many other policy reforms. But the correct use of artificial intelligence could go a long way in itself towards bridging these achievement gaps. Not only that, I believe that it will very soon be possible for any child in our country to receive a richer educational experience than any child did just a few years ago. And this is because of the absolutely incredible capabilities that are now accessible to anyone for free or at very little cost on a computer or smartphone. And we saw during our hearing examples of how these possibilities are already being realized in many classrooms across America, where you can have, for example, a personalized tutor who knows just about everything there is to know, who knows everything about your own strengths and weaknesses, your own interests, and who engages with you directly to learn any topic. Now, this is no small matter because studies show that having access to a high-quality tutor is one of the most important interventions that improves educational outcomes by a significant degree, potentially moving you, a half standard deviation or so, or giving you more than a year's worth of additional learning in any given year if you have access to a high-quality tutor. Well, with AI tools, any child will have that access at a level that has never been known before, in a more personalized way than has ever been known before. And what's more is that these tools allow for learning across different modalities, through text, through hearing, or through images, through voice, and can engage with different students in different ways. Or, just to give you another example, can take on the form of different characters. So when you're learning history, you could actually have a conversation with an animated version of a historical figure. If you're reading a book, you could actually have a conversation with a character in the book. If you're learning physics, maybe you could learn physics from a reanimated version of Einstein himself. And these are just the tip of the iceberg. When you look at the technologies that are advancing when it comes to augmented reality, when it comes to VR, we're already seeing ways in which AI is being deployed for sort of career training type learning, whether it's welding or other types of career or trades where these environments can be simulated in very realistic ways to help students learn regardless of whether they go to a school where you can get hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of expensive machinery. So I think that we are still just scratching the surface of what is possible here. One of the suggestions at our hearing is that we need to continue to facilitate ways of sharing best practices. And importantly as well, when it comes to how these tools can be used by teachers, because teachers' role is as important as ever, is potentially more important, in the sense that having access to AI tools that can assist students in individual ways actually frees teachers in many ways to provide the sort of mentorship and instruction and teaching that only a caring human can. So we saw examples at our hearing of how AI tools have been used to assist with lesson planning, have been used to help grade papers, or to provide direct, immediate feedback to students to help with the assessment process, and many other ways as well. And so for those who think that the AI tool is somehow going to change the role of the teacher, these tools can change the role of the teachers, but I think in very positive ways as well. Of course, there are risks in this domain as well when it comes to academic dishonesty, when it comes to the potential of further absorbing students into digital worlds and thereby exacerbating some of the harms that we've seen from excessive use of smartphones. All of those things we need to be very mindful of as well, which is why following our hearing, we're exploring ways to establish forums where these sort of best practices can be shared, so different teachers, different schools, different states can see what's happening elsewhere, see what the results are, see the impact it's having on the well-being and learning of our students. But this is one area where I think there truly is unbounded potential, and I'm looking forward to working with our subcommittee to try to assist districts across the country in unlocking that potential. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to yield to my, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, is recognized for the remainder of the hour as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to mourn the passing of Bob Phelan of Modesto, a valued and beloved member of my congressional staff for these past 3 years. His was a remarkable life and one that should inspire every American to realize the opportunities that freedom provides. When Bob's father died, he was forced to drop out of high school to work odd jobs to support their family. For nearly 10 years, he worked as a crab cracker at Aliotto's restaurant on Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. Searching for a better life, he came to Modesto, where his outgoing personality made him an ideal salesman and a manager for such well-known companies as Keebler.
Voters would be $37.7 million to get passports. And with that, I yield 1 minute to my dear friend, the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Williams.
The gentlewoman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today as the Congresswoman for Georgia's 5th District, the cradle of the civil rights movement, the home of Dr. King, Ambassador Andrew Young, and my predecessor, the late Congressman John Lewis. I carry their legacy with me every time I walk onto this floor. The SAVE Act is everything our civil rights leaders fought against. And don't think that it won't impact you or folks that you know. If you got married and changed your name, your ID, it won't match your birth certificate. If you don't have a passport and your ID doesn't match your birth certificate, you can't prove your citizenship. According to the SAVE Act, you won't be able to vote. Right now, under Trump and Musk's disastrous economy, families like so many of those that I represent back home in Georgia are struggling to keep up with the cost of groceries, let alone adding $130 for a passport just to register to vote. In Georgia, over half of the population doesn't have a passport, and our driver's licenses, even the real ID, doesn't prove citizenship. This bill could force Georgians to pay more than $700 million just to register to vote. Y'all, that's a poll tax, plain and simple, and it's blatant voter suppression. Voter suppression by any other name.
Mr. Speaker,
gentleman's time has expired.
Could I yield
The gentleman from New York?
Yes, sir. I'd like to yield an additional 30 seconds to
the gentleman is extended. The gentlewoman from Georgia, 30 seconds.
Voter suppression by any other name is still voter suppression. This bill violates the 14th, 19th, and 24th Amendments and is also every tenet of a free and inclusive democracy. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this disgrace of a voter suppression bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields her time. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Oklahoma, Ms. Bice, a member of the Committee on House Administration.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or the SAVE Act. Under President Biden, nearly 5 million illegal aliens were released into the United States. Biden's failure at the southern border has diluted the voting power that is reserved for only American citizens. This crisis is not only a national security concern, but one that can seriously alter the outcome of our elections. Just this past election cycle, both the states of Alabama and Virginia removed thousands of registered voters who were not American citizens. Securing our elections is of paramount importance, and we must ensure that it is easy to vote and hard to cheat. The SAVE Act will strengthen our election administration, improve voter confidence, and ensure that American elections are only for American citizens. Specifically, it amends the National Voter Registration Act to require states obtain proof of citizenship when an individual registers to vote. But let me be clear. This legislation does not prohibit married women from voting, and the absurd narrative of this has gotten out of control. When you change your name, Mr. Speaker, just as I have when I got married, you have to provide your birth certificate and a marriage certificate. This is already required when you update your ID, your Social Security records, and yes, your voter registration too. When your name is legally changed, it updates across government systems. Real ID, passport, other valid forms of ID mentioned in the SAVE Act are sufficient proof of citizenship. And no, your birth certificate doesn't have to match your current ID. Let me just add this. The claim is that it will disenfranchise married women and others who might have changed their name because the documentation might show 2 different names. But the SAVE Act itself addresses this point, Mr. Speaker, in the text. Page 14, line 9, directs the states to create a process for addressing this exact issue. I find myself asking, why are the Democrats refusing to take steps to safeguard our elections and protect the votes of every single American citizen? I strongly support the SAVE Act, and I look forward to voting for it, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I yield.
Gentlewoman yields her time. Gentleman from Wisconsin saves his time. Reserves his time. The gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hate to disagree with my dear friend from Oklahoma, but the words marriage certificate do not appear anywhere in the SAVE Act. In fact, it could have been written in that way, since you're adding all these lists and requirements of people to do. But it actually does make it harder for almost 70 million American women to vote. 84% of women choose their husband's name when they get married. That's just a statistic. As we've discussed, under the SAVE Act, most Americans will be unable to use the standard issue driver's license when registering to vote because most real IDs don't include citizenship on them. They don't automatically update if you haven't registered at all. So when you go to register, there's nothing to have updated. You have your birth certificate. In the case of Mary Beth Bauer, that's what it says on her certificate. Her voter ID now, her driver's license now says Mary Beth Morelli. She would not be able to register using those 2 pieces of information. She would have to get an additional part of documentation, which is not identified in the SAVE Act, to do it. I think we've talked about it at length. This is clearly intended to make it much more difficult. By the way, according to House Republicans, none of these women should be allowed to register votes. Roughly 25% of the U.S. citizen voting age population. I'd also like to just suggest to my friend from Oklahoma, Ms. Bice, an estimated 179,000 women in her district have a different name on their birth certificate than their current photo ID, and roughly 394,000 residents of Oklahoma's 5th District lacks a passport. So the SAVE Act would cost them $51.3 million to secure passports. With that, I will yield a minute to the gentleman and dear friend from California, Mr. Mullen.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Free and fair elections are the foundation of any functioning democracy. The SAVE Act is a blatant attempt to undermine our election system, weaken American democracy, and unfairly suppress millions of eligible citizens from voting. If the SAVE Act becomes law, eligible Americans would have to provide either a passport or birth certificate to register to vote and cast their ballot. About half of American citizens, roughly 150 million people, don't own a passport. If an eligible voter doesn't have the means to pay for a passport, they would need a birth certificate that states their current legal name. This act could suppress the votes of millions of women in this country who have changed their name after marriage. So to be clear, if you're a married woman, I guess Republicans don't want you to vote. If you can't afford a passport, Republicans don't want you to vote. If you're a college student whose birth certificate is back home, Republicans don't want you to vote. Congress has a responsibility to ensure all eligible citizens can participate in free and fair elections. The SAVE Act would do the opposite. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from New York reserves his time. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Colorado, Ms. Boebert.
The gentlewoman from Colorado is extended 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and bless my colleagues' hearts on the other side of the aisle. Using married women as a gotcha for voting. I've never had to bring my birth certificate to prove that I was a registered voter. I have an ID that has a different name than my birth certificate. And also, since we're using women as bait here, maybe in the next round of debates, they could explain to us exactly what a woman is. I rise in support of the SAVE Act. The American people are done messing around with a woke, weak-kneed system that lets our elections get hijacked. I am fighting for you, for me, for every American who knows our vote is sacred, and it's time to lock it down with citizens only. Let's cut the crap. Right now, you can walk up, check a box, claiming you're a citizen, and boom, you're registered for federal elections. No proof, no ID. That's not a system built on trust. It's a system vulnerable to error, fraud, and exploitation. And in Colorado, it was just expedited for the process for illegals to receive a driver's license. And in the state of Colorado, when you obtain a driver's license, you register to vote. The SAVE Act is a common sense measure designed to protect the integrity of our electoral process, and at its core, it requires proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. This isn't radical. It's not extreme. It's a basic safeguard to ensure that only those who are legally entitled to participate in our elections can do so. Let's be clear, this isn't about denying anyone's right to vote. It's about protecting the rights of every American citizen, not adding votes and subtracting American citizens' votes. I support the SAVE Act. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields her time. Gentleman reserve his time.
Reserve.
The gentleman reserves his time. The chair will remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House of Representatives and that any malfeasance of approval or disapproval of proceedings is in violation of the rules of the House. The gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I inquire as to the time remaining?
The gentleman from New York has 14 minutes. The gentleman from Wisconsin also has 14. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just note to the previous speaker that while Ms. Boebert has not had to bring all those documents, she hasn't had to register to vote under the SAVE Act. That's actually the point. And I would also remind her that an estimated 159,000 women in her district have a different name on their birth certificate than they have on their current photo ID, and that roughly 284,000 residents of Colorado's 4th District lack a passport. The SAVE Act could cost them $36.9 million to secure passports in order to register to vote. I would very much like to yield a minute to my friend, the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose the SAVE Act. Bottom line, the SAVE Act suppresses the votes of women, of Black, brown, and indigenous people, of veterans, and working class Americans. In advancing it, Republicans invoke those historical policies that were intended to disenfranchise Americans. Let me remind you what they were. Literacy tests and poll taxes for eligible voters, grandfather clauses which tied voters' right to their grandfathers before the Civil War, all-white primaries to eliminate black voters' presence in the electoral process, and now the show me your papers. The SAVE Act is the same trash, just a different day. It is the Republicans' latest attempt to make clear who they believe should have access to vote and who they think should not. Anyone who votes for this bill will go down in the history books with the likes of Confederate politicians, Jim Crow advocates, and white supremacists as bigots. I urge my colleagues to vote no. With that, I yield back.
The gentlewoman from Illinois yields her time. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the representative from Florida, Ms. Kamek, to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong support as a woman and as the chairwoman of the Republican Women's Caucus, not only just for election integrity, but clearly literacy, because y'all have not read the bill. That much is clear. This bill is very, very simple. It ensures that only American citizens can vote in our federal elections. This isn't hard. 87% of Americans agree that only Americans should vote in our elections. So it makes me wonder, why are my friends on the other side of the aisle always consistently looking for ways to ensure that illegals can vote in our elections? It's almost as though they have an ulterior motive. You have to show an ID to board a plane, to buy alcohol, to cash a check. You have to show an ID to buy cold medicine, for God's sakes. Why should people not have to verify their citizenship to register? And I say to register because my friend over here keeps pointing out that women in every single congressional district will have to provide proof of their name change in order to vote. Folks, read the bill, page 14. If you are registering to vote, there is a process by which the states establish. If you are already registered to vote, you are fine. Read the bill. Stop insulting women. I am sick and tired, and I know women across this country are sick and tired of being talked down to and being insulted repeatedly with the fear-mongering tactics of the left. It is disingenuous for them to stand there and continue to say that women will not be eligible to vote. This is about protecting one of our most sacred rights that we have as Americans. And I am so proud to stand here as a woman, as a married woman, and again, as the chair of the Republican Women's Caucus, in safeguarding and ensuring the integrity of our elections. I urge my colleagues to do the same.
Time has expired.
I yield an additional 15 seconds.
The gentleman from Wisconsin yields her an additional 15 seconds. Thank you.
I can keep preaching for an additional 30. The point is that Americans around this country are sick and tired of the fear-mongering tactics that they have been subjected to by the left for decades. We need to ensure the integrity of our elections. It has been demanded by the American people, and we're making good on that promise today. I urge my colleagues to support the SAVE Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Expired. Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves this time. Gentleman from New York.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think my colleagues doth protest too much. I've read the bill many times, debated the bill. There's nothing in the bill that allows you to bring a marriage license to prove who you are when you register to vote. You will have to do all the things we suggest you will have to do, and that's exactly the problem. And I'd like to also just remind my colleague and friend from Florida that in Ms. Kamek's district, an estimated 170,000 women in her congressional district have a different name on their birth certificate than on their current photo ID, and that roughly 409,000 residents of Florida's 3rd congressional district lack a passport. The cost to those individuals, $53.1 million to secure passports. With that, my dear friend, a member of our committee and the ranking member of the subcommittee on elections of House Administration, the distinguished gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, I'd like to yield her 2 minutes.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the House Republican so-called SAVE Act, the most restrictive voting law to be considered by this body in decades. The SAVE Act is just the latest in the ongoing assault on our democracy by President Trump and his allies in Congress. Instead of working to meet the needs of American people, House Republicans are busy spreading fear and lies to justify their attempts to disenfranchise millions of eligible voters. Let's be clear. It is already against the law for non-Americans to vote. This bill is a solution in search of a problem. The SAVE Act would create new barriers to the ballot box for millions of eligible voters. That includes almost 70 million American women who got married and changed their last name. It also includes 140 million Americans without a passport, and it includes Americans with military and tribal IDs. To be clear, this bill is not about protecting our elections. It's about making it harder for Americans to vote and easier for Republicans to win. As elected officials, we should be working to expand access to the ballot box, not restrict it. Congress should be considering H.R. 14, the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, to ensure that every American can freely and fairly vote. Mr. Speaker, this is very personal to me. I am not only the representative of America's Civil Rights District, but I am also the proud daughter of Selma, Alabama. It was in my hometown where hundreds of foot soldiers were bludgeoned on a bridge for the equal right of all Americans to vote. This legislation before us today makes a mockery of their legacy. I urge all of my colleagues to vote no on the SAVE Act. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Bean, to speak on the bill.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. One citizen, one vote. It's the pillar of our democracy. And, Mr. Speaker, you would think that of all the issues that we debate on this hallowed floor, this is the one. This is the one that brings everybody together. The pillar of our democracy, one citizen, one vote. Everybody's on the same team. Mr. Speaker, you would be wrong. It's amazing you would be wrong, because there are people in this room that think women are incapable of getting an ID. I think that's an insult to women. Mr. Speaker, let me remind you why we're here. We're here because this previous administration, the Biden administration, imported 10 to 15 million illegal aliens who have come here, and we have evidence that they're participating in our elections. The next thing you'll say is, did they get Social Security numbers? Mr. Speaker, they did. The Doge team just announced millions of illegals now have Social Security numbers. It's happening, and it ends today when we vote on this SAVE Act. Now, I've just heard my colleagues say it's already against the law. It's already against the law. We don't need this act. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, why it's already against the law for a minor to buy beer, but yet the clerk checks the ID before the purchase is made. We need the SAVE Act. We need security. We need to come together, and I will invite our colleagues to come together. There's still time to agree that the pillar of our democracy is one citizen, one vote. The right answer on the SAVE Act is a yes vote. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman's time. He yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin reserves his time. The gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman's comments leads me to the question. Do Republicans believe that every attestation under federal law is rife for subversion? Americans must attest under penalty of perjury that their tax returns contain correct information. Do Republicans want to end this honor system by requiring Americans to provide even more documentation to the Internal Revenue Service? It's a federal crime to lie on alcohol, tobacco, and firearms form 4473, the firearms transaction record. That form is filled out under the same honor system that governs voter registrations. Are you telling me that Republicans are open to strengthening gun licensing laws in the United States and no longer accept attestation? Each of us must submit records to the FEC, attesting under penalty of perjury that our campaign committee reports are accurate. Do Republicans now want to provide the American people greater transparency around political spending? Because if they do, I've got a bill that can support the Freedom to Vote Act. I'd also just suggest to the gentleman, Representative Bean, that an estimated 170,000 women in his district have a different last name on their birth certificate than is on their current photo ID, and roughly 397,000 residents of Florida's 4th District do not have a passport. It would cost them $51.7 million to secure one. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman, my friend from New Jersey, Mr. Conaway.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong opposition to the SAVE Act. While everyday Americans are struggling from the fallout of Trump's disastrous tariff policies, Republicans are pushing through a bill that strips Americans' constitutional right to vote, a vote that was hard-won and for which many died. They claim the SAVE Act is intended to prevent undocumented immigrants from voting, but it's already illegal for them to vote, and it is extremely rare. In reality, the SAVE Act makes it harder for Americans, especially women and people of color, to participate in our elections. We've seen these tactics before, creating barriers to the ballot box to suppress the vote, and yet Republicans continue to find ways to undermine democracy. I urge my colleagues to take a hard look in the mirror and ask themselves, do you want to stand on the side of voter suppression, or do you want to stand on the side of democracy? I choose democracy and will vote no on this dangerous anti-American bill. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, we're hearing from the other side that it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote. That's true. It's also illegal to evade Border Patrol and cross the border illegally into the United States of America. But enforcement matters. And we can look at what happens when you don't enforce the law under the Biden administration, what happens when you enforce the law under the Trump administration. I think back about when I went home to my hometown in Janesville, Wisconsin the other day, and I went to buy a 6-pack of beer. I walked in, and the gentlewoman at the desk said, "Brian, good to see you." Went back, grabbed a 6-pack of beer, came up. She said, "Brian, I need to see your ID." Pulled out my ID and handed it to her. She reviewed it. She allowed me to purchase a 6-pack of beer. Am I the only one here that thinks it's absolutely absurd that we protect our beer more than we protect our ballots? This law allows us to make sure that only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. Mr. Speaker, it's about enforcement of the law. I would ask my colleagues across the aisle, how many non-citizen votes should be okay? The answer to me and my colleagues on this side of the aisle is 0. Because every non-citizen that votes in a federal election in the United States of America cancels out the vote of a U.S. citizen. As we know in this chamber, very often House races are close. One of our representatives in this chamber was elected by simply 6 votes. 1 non-citizen voting in a federal election in the United States is too many. And the arguments I'm hearing from my colleagues on the left is that they're okay with non-citizens voting. It's essential that not only do we have the law, we enforce the law. And the SAVE Act does just that. It's my good friend Chip Roy from the state of Texas, the author of the bill, who I've been working with to do just that. And I now yield my friend, the gentleman from Texas, Chip Roy, as much time as he may consume to speak on the bill.
The gentleman has provided the gentleman from Texas for as much time as he may consume. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank the Speaker. I want to thank the chairman for his strong work and commitment to election integrity and to working with us on this bill, in particular, the SAVE Act. He's done an extraordinary job, and I'm proud to work with him and work with the rest of my colleagues on it. I'm proud to work with my friend Cleta Mitchell, who had a significant hand in what we were doing here. I'm quite certain that she is pretty well aware of protecting the right of females to be able to vote, along with my friends Stephanie Bice and Mary Miller and Laurel Lee, and Lauren Boebert, and Kat Kamak, all of whom came down to the floor in full support of this legislation, because they know the truth. They know the truth that the American people know, which is that as much as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to bring up the DMV, the American people know that the DMV is very good at giving driver's license to illegal aliens because we know it to be true. We know that there are people who have been indicted for voting illegally. We know that there are voter rolls with massive numbers of people who are illegally present in the United States. We know that the previous administration let in millions of people into the United States, wrongfully and illegally under parole and asylum, blatantly abusing the law to put people in the United States that have no basis for being here, many of whom carried out dangerous acts against American people, killed American citizens, but importantly, have been registering to vote. That's what's been happening. So what we understand is the American people have spoken very clearly that they believe only American citizens should vote in American elections. There's nothing controversial about that. There's nothing controversial about saying that you should be able to ensure that only citizens vote. And let's be very clear. Federal law has currently been interpreted to prohibit states from being able to check citizenship. That's the truth. That's why the state of Arizona, for example, has two systems, one for state and local, one for federal.
When he speaks, the gentleman's continued to
The
recognize.
good people of Arizona have two systems in place. They check for citizenship for state and local elections, and they're unable to check for citizenship in federal elections. The point of this bill is to ensure that we guarantee only citizens vote by allowing those states to be able to check, by having systems, federal systems, be open to the states to be able to check, and to require proof of citizenship when you register. There's nothing complex about that. There's nothing more sacred under the Constitution than ensuring that the people are able to have the voice in the election of the people that represent them in Washington and throughout the country. Once that is undermined, then people lose faith in the very institutions upon which this is built. This legislation is designed to restore that faith, to save our elections, to save election integrity. I'm proud to have worked on this bill with my friend, the chairman, with my colleagues on this side of the aisle, and I would note that 5 of my Democrat colleagues joined us last summer to vote for this bill. Hardly a partisan exercise. Hardly a partisan exercise to say that we should protect the elections of the American people. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill, to restore confidence and faith in our elections, to take a step forward in ensuring that people know that citizens will be in control of this republic as the founders intended. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves his time. Gentleman from New York.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a